out to the show and fall at your door. We got that info for you. Touchdown on that plane and buy anything. More than just a podcast for you.
This is the part where we pivot, and I'm going to start with you in this on this question, Curtis. How has COVID changed the recruiting process? And I want you guys to be as specific as possible, because the follow up to this is, and maybe you marry this because there's two questions remaining. One question is, how has COVID changed the recruiting process? And the other question is, what specific steps you would give to high school parents, and I want to caveat that middle school parents, what steps should they be taking in this environment to get their kids noticed? So I don't know if we married those two questions together, but I'll pull us back. So I want to, if I may, Curtis, I'd like to start with you. How has COVID changed the recruiting process?
Um, let me step back on a couple things. One, I think that not every path is going to be the same for everyone. There are numerous ways to be seen. But what we say here, there are numerous different avenues that you can take. And
Okay.
not one of them is right, and not one of them is wrong. It's just everyone's going to take a different path. So hopefully we're giving you the information to take different paths and not just one path, because what I may say may not work for a lot of you, and then there may be another path that works great. And the other thing I think that we haven't mentioned a whole lot is I don't care if it's NEIA, Division 3, Division 2, Division 1. Coaches, college coaches want to hear from the player and not the parents, as much
Mm,
as possible. When you're talking about calling for an ID, it's good that that high school coaches, club coaches are calling to maybe find out, but they also, I can't tell you in the past 2 weeks how many said, "Hey, I want to hear from your player. Like, you show me that this is some place that you're really interested in." Now, if you're sitting 5 or 6, it's easier for me to make a phone call and go, "Okay, what are your dates? Here's the 6 players I'm going to send." But when you start getting into that, what Ahmad was saying is, like, when you're starting to figure out your schools that you've sort of narrowed down, they want to hear from the player. The parents are out of it at that point. They really want to hear from the player themselves of, "Hey, is this something that the player wants, or is this something that the parent wants?" Because a lot of them, whether it's NEIA, like I said, Division 3, Division 2, they have tons of emails. They have tons of phone calls that people are calling. The number one way for them to separate is, am I hearing from the parent, or am I hearing from the player? Because if I
ooh,
know I hear from the player, then I know that person is really interested in my school. If I hear from the
say that
parent,
again.
I don't know if the parent's interested in my school or if the player's interested in my school. Um,
Mhm.
so it is a high school coach, club coach, ODP coach, all of those things. My first
Right.
suggestion for all of them is players pick up the phone and call. Players
Yeah.
get on your laptop, especially now. Pre-COVID, after COVID, doesn't really matter. Emails, every college coach has an email address. You have to work a little bit to get them. Some
Mhm.
websites are even other, but they all have them. You can find them. You can send an email, and don't bluff it. They know whether it's coming from a
Right.
parent or player.
Okay.
Mhm.
I think sometimes we think, oh, well, maybe I'll just send this one as a parent, but they don't realize that they have tons of them. They can tell the difference whether it's a parent or a player. Just
Mhm.
encourage them to be proactive in their recruiting, and not the parents. The parents can help them out, which I'm all for, and I think it does need to be mutual people to help that one player get recruited, or find the right place. I don't think it just falls on a club coach, a high school coach. I think it's multiple people that have to work together in that. But my thing is a player, man, grab hold of the horns and you lead. You lead it. You get the front of the boat and you decide which way you want that boat to travel. Have the people in the back of the boat that have oars that are helping you direct it. But at the end of the day, you've got to be the captain of the ship, when you do that. That would be one of my biggest things, especially recently. I've talking to a lot of college coaches lately. That's been their number one, is they've heard from more parents and less players. And you can separate, and they just move on. I mean, they'll be honest, like, we've heard from the parent 3 times. We haven't heard from the player. We're moving on to the next one. Like,
Mhm.
they don't have time, especially this day and age, to go through all of them and to see, well, were they really interested? So encourage them, help them out. You can sit there with them while they have that conversation. Have them pre-conversations, sit there and say, ask questions. As parents can ask questions to their son or daughter, like, hey, here's some typical questions that are going to be asked. So when they do talk to them, they can be prepared for that and not just sit there. But to go back to your question, sorry to get off another little.
No. You know, I'm all about the
spot on.
nuggets, about practical stuff that parents really need to know. And
Yeah.
I love that they didn't hear it from me.
Yes.
Like they're not hearing it from me. That
Yeah.
was like, that's going to be in my, as soon as this is over, I'm going to go talk to my mom group. Hey guys, teach them how to communicate on their own. That was priceless.
Yeah. And the thing is every club coach, high school coach, anyone that they're affiliated with will help them through that. Like, here's the questions they may ask you. Here's some things that you have to be prepared for. Here's how you actually need to reach out. And I think we're going to get into that. And, here's some steps that you can do to put yourself on the forefront. So when a college coach goes, oh yeah, I remember that name, or yeah, hey, I know I've got, several emails from you, when you do finally get to talk to them, like, oh yeah. So now they realize that the importance from that player is really high compared to, well, I've got 6 emails from you, but I can't tell whether it's from your parent or whether it's from you. Would be the one thing, whether it's pre-COVID, after COVID, doesn't really matter at this part. They want to hear from you as an individual. It just sets you apart in a different stage than someone that just gets random emails. And don't, like I said, the other part is don't bluff it. Don't parents try to, skew the system and send an email without their kid knowing that they know. I mean, they're smart. I mean, these college coaches, they've seen 1,000 of them. They know they can pick them apart pretty easily. It doesn't matter what level it is. So, I think going back to your original question, the post-COVID is, it's changed tremendously. And, Ahmad says it best, it doesn't matter. We talked about this last time. There is more academic money out there than there is athletic money. I don't care if it's pre-COVID or after COVID, take care of your academics first. That's where the money is. I said this last time. If I'm a college coach and I'm trying to get a roster between 26 and 30 players, and I only have, I'm fully funded with 14 full rides, Division I, guess what? Not everyone's getting a full ride. I can't give 14 players full rides and go, well, okay, now I'll have 14 players. I have to divide that money up. And as a college coach, if I know that I can give you 90% academic money and then only 10% soccer money, guess what? It's still free money. It doesn't matter what the label is, whether it's academic or soccer. Free money to me is free money. But there's lots of academics and a lot of college coaches love to give away that free academic money because then it's not coming from their individual budget. Now, some schools are different, and some of that academic money may be pulled out of their budgets, but those are some of the small schools. But the big schools, it's all the same in terms of, hey, great, I can give you academic money. It's not touching my budget whatsoever, which is really, really good. Post-COVID, Division I coaches right now, they can't have ID camps. You can't go to them. Even if you're on their campus, they cannot come talk to you. That's hurt. You see all these big showcases tournaments, even the smaller tournaments now are finding ways of selling the part of setting up a camera. They turn it on. You can watch multiple games on it now. So a lot of the Division I's are doing that. Division II, Division III, they are loving it. And part of it that I really like about this part is now it's making more players look at the Division II, Division III, and not just a part of, it's not Division I, I'm not going. Because Division II and Division III coaches, NAA, they are showing up at the field. Nothing has changed at this point. They can show up at the games. They can watch you play. They can talk to you at the end of the tournament. They can't talk to you during the tournament. They can talk to you at the very end of the tournament. Unless you're NAA, then you have your own rules, and that's a whole different ball game. But but for me, that's one of the biggest differences that Division I, Division II, Division III, NAA right now. The post-COVID is you can get on campus. You can go right now. If you're interested in those schools, Division II, Division III, NAA, I'm pretty sure like Nate and Ahmad are in the same way as there are tons of ID camps that are popping up all over the place for Division II, Division III, NAA. They're having them. Get your, find the schools that you're interested, get out there. Those things are still happening now. Those things are opening up.
Yeah.
If you feel that's safe for you. I know that a lot of people may not feel safe in sending their kid right now. I would still reach out if I know that there's an ID camp and I know that I'm interested in that school, but I don't feel physically safe to be able to send my son or daughter to that ID camp. I would still reach out to them and let them know, hey, I'm really interested in your school. I'd love to send my son or daughter to your camp, but I just don't feel right now, it's a safe environment for them. So at least they know that you're still interested in their school. There's other things like that I think that we can still be proactive on. So a lot of it is right now, post COVID is, you can still do a lot of the things. It's just the Division I is set things back. And now, especially with NCAA giving everyone another extra year of eligibility, I don't think people realize, and we're talking, Division I, it's still, like Ahmad said, you're talking about 2%, that are really going for the Division I, which is a small amount, but they're out there and we want to make sure that we include them. Mm-hmm. Because a lot of them are trying to figure out whether their seniors are going to take another year or not. I know we feel like the UNCs, UTKs, the Vol, all those have the money to give those people an extra year. But some of the other division schools can't afford to give their seniors an extra year and still bring on a freshman. So a lot of those things are going on as well. I know that they NCL eligibility maybe will let them do it, but some of the schools just can't afford it. So there's lots of those things. Division II, Division III, NAI, it's back to normal. There's nothing now that's stopping them. You can go to ID camps, you can get on their websites. They're out there. They're popping up all over the place. ID camps, there's some really, really good ID camps. There's also some ID camps that I would say just be careful with. Some of them are trying to do the best they can of finding the right players, of like, what Renee was saying. I love it that you can go to Lipscomb and say, hey, what coaches do you have coming? And they'll tell you what college coaches are coming. Some of them, it's a moneymaker. And that's the other part of it is we talk about club being moneymakers, but some of these ID camps are moneymakers, and you just got to find the right fit and making sure that it's not just, my coaches are the only ones that are going to be there. You try to find the ones where they're going to have multiple coaches that are going to be there, because it's money for them too. They're trying to make money off of it as well, especially in the crisis that we're having economically, and some of these budgets and soccer budgets on the men and women's side. So post-COVID, answer, Division I completely changed.
No, you just said something that I don't think that I would have thought to highlight. So you said that as a parent, when I identify a school that has an ID camp, either me or my child, we can ask them if other coaches are going to be there.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Oh, should be definitely would be the number one question. Would be like, what are the coaches? Hey, look, I'm really interested in the school, but could you mind telling me which other coaches? And a lot of them, well, I'd say almost all of them, the coaches I know would tell you, oh, great, here's one. I know UTC here, University of Tennessee at Chattanooga, he does a great job of not only does, his staff is going to be there, but he brings in Division II, Division III, and NAI coaches. So you get a level of all different ones. And every coach is going to look at a player differently. Like Ahmad said, is they may have a player they look and go, man, she's an unbelievable forward, but you know what? I don't need her. And a Division II coach may go, man, you know what? Mine just graduated. I really want this girl. Great. I'm gonna go after her. And they all work together too. So, even within their ID camp, they're working together. So yes, ask. The worst thing, my high school coach told me the best quote I've ever heard is, the worst thing that someone can say is no. So if you ask and they say no, you move on. But it never hurts to at least ask questions.
See, a lot of parents don't, especially, when I'm dealing with moms, but a lot of parents, they don't even know if they can ask. You just really don't know. You don't know. So this was beautiful to ask, and they hear it from someone else. And here's something specific that you should ask, because I don't know if you know that you said this or not, Curtis, but you said that if there's not multiple coaches there, then a parent needs to really think about whether it's worth their dime to attend.
Yeah. Well,
Well, and ID camps run different prices too.
Yes.
So it helps, like, especially if you're going to go at like a more high end price, you're going to want to know what's happening. If this weekend is costing me $400 to send my child there, who all is there? Now, like for another school in Tennessee, Lincoln Memorial University offered a $50 ID camp. They were only them, so you knew you were only getting them. But also, that's a lot easier for my kids to go to. $50 to drop on a weekend doesn't kill them. $400 means that like they're already all working, and now they're trying to figure out how to piece together that sort of money just based on the demographic that I work with.
Okay.
So like, so you know, if I'm going to invest, right, what's my return? Who all's going to be there? Who do I have looking at me? So it's worth knowing. Another thing that he touched on very subtly is that, you know, UTC will have plenty of women's programs there. They won't have men's programs there. UTC doesn't offer men's soccer. UTK doesn't offer men's soccer. Vanderbilt doesn't offer men's soccer. Austin Peay State University doesn't offer men's soccer. So there are all these like schools that are like big schools in the state that a lot of people are used to by name and everything. You're like, all right, well, I'm going to send my kid there. Even at D1 level, men's soccer isn't always available at the school that the name you're used to. And so you have to do your research to figure out, are we even playing the game there? Because I've played at UTC against them before, and it was a club game.
Got it. Got it. Okay. Kind of like, okay, so Vanderbilt made the news in football this year because of the kicker. They had,
Right. And they would have
and-
just used a guy, but there was no guy soccer team. So the next best kicker on campus was the girl. Now, I love the fact that she still actually earned her spot for extra points when the rest of their kickers came back, because she kicked it a higher percentage on extra points that week at practice. That was dope. But but yeah, like that was who was available.
and it didn't, like, I knew Vanderbilt, like in my brain, I'm like, oh, they don't have men's soccer. So but then I'm like, oh, that's not an aberration. Like there are lots of, like, and I'm listening to this conversation, like there are lots of, I'm saying this as a parent, you just assume that the bigger schools are going to have all the sports. It just doesn't,
They do
you know,
not.
just your mind like, oh, they won't have that. So this was a valuable conversation. So parents, don't assume that, I know a lot of y'all listening to the show are D1 or bust. We tried very hard to give you concrete data to let you know that that's a lie. But those of us who don't believe that, who really are D1 or nothing, there may be nothing. You need to do your due diligence to find out if they offer the sport that your kid wants to play. Don't assume that because they have basketball or football that they're going to have soccer or volleyball or swimming or any of the other sports that are not considered quote unquote traditional money-making sports. That one right there, Nate, that was another. You guys are dropping jewels. Look at us. 11 is a real thing in the soccer world. Ask. Don't do your child's homework for them. Let your child do their own homework. And it may not be offered. Just because the school has a great name doesn't mean that they're going to have your sport. Wow. So I know I jumped in there to like give my parents some nuggets, but Ahmad, do you want to this was the last question. You want to interject COVID, how it's changing, what you're doing different?
No. I'm like you. Yeah, the nuggets are out there. I think probably the biggest thing, and we're talking after COVID now, so I can jump in on why that's different. The biggest thing is just you just will not be seen how you're used to being seen now. That's just not, it's not going to happen like you expect it to. I can't stress enough that everybody, thanks Curtis for bringing it back up, every single athlete is different and unique. Just because Sally got recruited to to Ole Miss or UTK, where does not mean that the coach wants you there, or if you can even fit there. Just because Sally got scholarship money does not mean you are supposed or even entitled to the exact same scholarship money. So I think the biggest thing to stress with post-COVID is the journey will not look like it has always looked. Film. Another thing that I think we did not touch on enough is social media presence. And I'm saying social media presence because so many, of us, I think, are, a little bit older, think, all right, well, social media, we're using it to relate to our players or whatever. But for youth now, this is their day-to-day life. If they're doing it, it's on social media. If they're at the store, they put it on social media. If they got, if they got something new happening, it's the way they interact. So I think social media presence needs to be combed through, not just by the parent, but also ask a coach that hey, what do you think are some good things that you want to see me post on my social media? Do I need 2 different pages? There was some feedback I got that was really good. One, to share with your family and friends and those you want to have, intimate conversations and do life with. And then the other, just for the business of getting recruited. Post your games, post your highlights, post what you're doing well in your position, post who you're playing, post the tournament that you're at, if there is any competition. That's no different from the professional world where we have personal and professional pages, and you are learning and grooming to be a professional. So separate the two. So I think that, and even as a coach, I'm just now understanding Instagram, the Instagram story. My goodness, how it's one thing to have an Instagram page, right? The page is one thing. You post pictures, some people look, but there is something about the Instagram story that gives people the live, unadulterated, raw footage and feed of what's going on in the moment. That's current, that's modern, that's relevant. College programs are paying attention to that, and there's a difference between not just the story, but just a regular post and video. I can tell you from updating our club's page for posting videos of players that I think are, or just a phrase saying college ready. Probably 4 to 5 different colleges in the area that are familiar with the club have signed on and viewed that stuff. And that's an immediate segue, right, for the player to reach out to the college or the college to reach out to the player. So social media presence is so important, especially because you can't have physical presence to do that same business with. So yeah, definitely film. Any film is better than no film. I guess outside of that, make sure that you have solid relationships. So for the places that you cannot get to physically, you can't do those official or unofficial visits. Hey, Coach Curtis, are there any college coaches that that might be willing to give me an honest look or honest feedback? Hey, Coach Nate, hey, Coach Ahmad, so the coaches that you are currently working with, make us do our jobs. You can't physically go. You can't afford to pay for an ID camp. Use us as your resources because we're here to help you.
So I want to just before I wrap up and end the show, I just want to I want to ask a question. When I talk to my moms, just blanket in general, regardless of sport, I tell them everybody should have a social media profile. And in the profile, it should have your child's correct name. Like coaches don't want to look for you. And if they can't find you, then they're not gonna search. And then the year that they graduate, the school that they go to, the position or positions that they play, ACT, SAT scores, and a link to if they have Huddle or whatever film, a link to the film and their measurables. Is that too much, or is that really what a coach wants to see at a glance? They want to go to one spot where in your profile they can see who you are, where you go to school, what your scores are, a link to it. Am I being like too detailed, or is that what we should have?
I don't want to say that's too detailed at all. I think in most aspects, the more detailed, the better. I think you might get overbearing when um, you start telling a story maybe that you want to insert that the coach doesn't really need to hear. So, outside of soccer, what their exam scores are in college algebra, no, I think it needs to be specific. And if you're going to use the detail, yeah, that stuff is great. You listed all the good things about it. What position, graduation year, ACT, SAT scores, GPA, extracurriculars that might be linked to scholarship funds. So a lot of schools will award a leadership or merit scholarships, for students who are active in national honor societies or, scout troops or things like that. All that stuff is good that relates to what makes your child or son or daughter marketable to the soccer coach. But if it does not directly relate, then sure, you may want to think about, telling that kind of information out.
I just, in my
That
mind, I'm
stuff
like, if
should
I were,
be part of your NCAA and NAIA if you sign up for them profiles.
Mm-hmm.
So like for a D1 profile, there's like a fee, but it's not like, I think the fee is like $60 or $65. For D2 and D3, you should actually be able to get an NCAA profile that you put together that should work in conjunction with your high school, the counselor.
That's the clearinghouse process or the eligibility center process.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. The clearing. Yes. So like those processes, all that information should already be there. So like if they're really serious about you and you send them that, then you already have all that. That way you don't have to post all that stuff a second time somewhere on the internet and create potential security issues for your family. Because there are people that sometimes see your child and are very interested in where they go, and they're not interested in recruiting for sports at all. So you do want to keep your children safe. But so some of that stuff belongs over in like the clearinghouse process, and like just send coaches can go to that. We don't have to broadcast it online otherwise in less secure locations.
Okay.
That doesn't need to be part of my Twitter profile.
That's a different view. I asked. Go ahead.
If I can add another thing, I think just post-COVID recruiting, one of the things that we've done is set up in-house recruit events. And what I mean is working with the college coaches that us coaches know who are willing to come to our club and train our players and work in, so even if they can't have a, official contact with the NCAA, if I have a player meeting and say, hey, if you have not done the NCAA clearinghouse process, you need to start. Have you sent your resumes to these schools that you're interested in? Oh, by the way, I got a buddy over here at so-and-so state soccer program that's going to talk about the importance of it. And they'll do that. Our college coach friends will do that for us. They'll go, they'll get on FaceTime. They'll give live feedback and advice to our players like that. So can you set up, if you can't go physically, and I like her Chris says, if you just don't feel safe going to a specific college ID camp, do you have relationships, or do your coaches have relationships with coaches that might be willing to come to you and train, do a session for your teams, do a session for your high school, do a session for a few high schools in one place to get them that exposure to in post-COVID times for sure.
That is a really good out of the box suggestion. It's a really I like to be respectful of your time. So before I wrap up, any last final thoughts, gems, nuggets you guys want to share with the parents who are listening?
Go, just do not try to pretend to be a NCAA scholar. I think that was probably my biggest stumbling block in understanding every single NCAA violation. Please don't try. It is long. It is boring. It is not something that I'm going to pick up right now and finish by the end of the day Sunday. I will be reading until the end of the next week, trying to understand all the ins and outs about NCAA. But what I would encourage you to is go to NCAA and find just their fact sheet on high school athletes and the rate of high school athletes are going to colleges and getting scholarships. So to get yourself a real picture of what that will look like to get your child an athlete in the college. So look for, like you say, those nuggets. I like to say compact but impact information that is relevant to your college recruiting process. And if you need additional resources outside of that, we can be a resource as well. But I think the biggest thing is do not try to be an NCAA scholar lifelong. They don't give you a degree for that. However, there are graduate certificate programs that are now equipping athletic administrators with kind of a certificate or master those things now. But for so long, there has not been the case. So I think don't try to overdo it or learn too much information that you get so overwhelmed, because this is a process that is long. That is for us can be anywhere from 2 to 6 years. So 18, right, starting at 12 all the way till when they graduate 18. And you just don't want to get so frustrated that you do your children a disservice.
Okay. Nate, Curtis?
My thing is try to keep it as simple as possible. Ahmad has said it numerous times, like Nate Stevens said it. Anytime you have a chance to get a video, and you even said it, a huddle. We use huddle here. If you can make a little highlight film. That's the best thing. Send it out to college coaches. And then from there, if you know that you're going to a tournament, you know you're going, whether it's a college showcase or whatever, if you know you're going to a tournament, a week out, we tell our players here a week out, email the coaches that you are interested in, see if they're going to that tournament, give them your schedule, tell them what jersey number you wear. Make it as simple as possible for the college coaches. So they're not having trying to figure out the schedule, the field. If you know that these are 5 or 6 places you're interested in, send an email to those college coaches, tell them you're going to these tournaments in the spring or wherever it may be. Let them know what jersey number you are a week out. Let them make sure that you know what field that you're going to be on. So if they are at the field, they're not trying to search, through 500 people to try to find you. Constantly, doesn't mean every day or every week you have to send an email, but, send an email once every 2 weeks, check in with the schools that you're interested with, because it lets them know that you're interested. I mean, Ahmad said it now. In the past, they're going to find you. Now you have to sell yourself a little bit. And that's not a bad thing. Everyone thinks that that's a bad thing, but you have to do some work. It's like anything else. If you want it, you got to put work to it. And it doesn't have to be as complicated. Set a reminder on your phone, especially as technology is now. Once every 2 weeks, I'm going to email these 5 places. Then the next week, I may email another 5 places. And send highlight videos. Highlight videos, they don't have to be 10 minutes long. When you make a highlight video, every college coach is going to tell you the same thing is put your best highlights early. As they go through numerous of these, they're not going to sit through maybe the whole 10 minutes. They may sit through the first 3 or 4 minutes. So put your best clips up front. If they come back and ask for a full film, then great, we can give that to them. Either the high school club coaches, make it as simple as possible for the college coaches. You have to do the work to make it easy for them, and they will appreciate that at the end of the day. And then you never know. I sent a highlight tape to a Division I coach, loved the player, is interested in the player, and then guess what? The college coach asked me about the other player that was in the video as well. So you never know. That's when we say your path. You never know, because not only was that girl in the highlight, but the person that she always played the ball to is in the highlight, and they got seen. So now he's like, well, what about this? And I'm like, yeah, great. So you never know how it's going to be. Every path is different, but keep knocking on the door. Make the college coach eventually say no, or I'm not interested. I'm not saying you have to call them all the time and email them all the time, but you do need to be on the forefront of it. You do need to make sure they still recognize your name, that you're interested in their school. Majority of them that I'm pretty sure Nate and Ahmad work with will be open and honest with you. Like, no, listen, we're interested in you, but we have no money. Or listen, we're interested with you. Or guess what? We're not interested with you. And then you can go on to the next one. That's why you're not picking one school at the very beginning. You're picking 10 and trying to narrow it down as you go through. But again, the KISS principle is always, something that's very simple. Just keep it simple. I know this world is crazy now, and there's tons of NCAA rules. And like Ahmad said, you don't need to know them all. But what you can do is you make a highlight video, send it to the coaches, introduce yourself, let them know what high school, what club coach you play for. Just give them a little brief introduction. They don't need to read it through, your philosophy of soccer or any of that kind of stuff. Just keep it simple. And then throughout, now all of a sudden you can start to build that relationship with the coach and really figure out if that's a place that you want to go. And then when you do figure those things out, then you can do what Nate said is find an ID camp. Go to 4 or 5 of them. Whether you play club or not. And then through those ID camps, you can realize, man, look, I love this place and I thought it was gonna be great. And I got on campus, like, I can't see myself here. So it's not just the soccer aspect of it, it's the social aspect of it as well. But I think there's just 3 or 4 or 5 different little small steps that you can take to put yourself out there. Whether it's through social media, email, again, players need to be in the forefront of it. Everyone needs to be supporting that player and helping them out, but they don't want to hear from the parents. They want to hear from the players. It's our job as coaches. I try to ask my players of, hey, once you've contacted that school, let me know. Because I don't mind going back behind and saying, hey, look, did this person contact you? This is my thoughts on them. Majority of the time, no college coach is going to offer a scholarship to anyone without seeing them play. So they don't really care about their playing. The questions I get asked is, how are their character? How do they handle training going in day out with the high school? Because that's one thing that we do offer is that compared to club is we train every single day, and that's different for some athletes. They want to know, how are they as a teammate? How are they in the class? Those are things that we can help out by following up. And that's what Ahmad and Nate both said is, listen, use us as resources. No coach, I think, in this day and time is going to say, no, I'm not helping you. I think we're all going to help,
Right.
even if we don't know that college coach specifically. They're always going to listen to us. We can pick up the phone. We can send an email as well, just to help them out. Like I said, it's different paths, but it doesn't always have to be the same for everyone. And realize that you have a support system, whether you have money or not. Money should not dictate whether you get recruited or not. There's different ways that we can find around that and be able to help out that are free. But you also realize, like some ID camps, they can't give discounts and things like that, especially Division Ones, on those things. But those are little things that they can figure out as they go through the process. But if you keep it simple, get a highlight tape, get it out there to coaches, email the coaches, especially your schedule, maybe through the spring or that's coming up. Let them know when a week out, what field you're on, what jersey number you are, your ACT. That's where I think you can start adding those things in without bombarding them. And then, after the tournament, just say, hey, thanks for coming. Especially if you knew that they were there, send them something back saying, hey, glad you came to watch me play. Any thoughts, any ideas? Some of them can email you back, some of them can't. And that's where you possibly pick up the phone call and call them, and then you can have some of those hard conversations. But you got to be willing to have college coaches tell you no. And that just means that's not the right fit for you. And let's find the right fit for you. Like they say, one door shuts, another door opens. So you just got to find the right door that opens. But that is my little piece of advice, is, it is work and make it as easy as possible for them, but you don't have to bombard them. You just got to make sure that you're selling yourself in the right way.
Yeah, that is the big stuff. We talked about parents staying out of the way. Actually, the place where I've seen that the most, because I also teach a class on a college campus, is when you go to visit, like, have the student prepared to already be communicating with the coach, because as it turns out, the coach is very interested in how, like, your student athlete is going to communicate with them when they get out there, because they're not coaching your old behind on the field. They don't care about how well you talk to them. So, like, if your child is getting put back behind your shoulders and peeking out, like, this is saying something about the psychology of what this relationship might potentially look like. And coaches, think about that. I mean, I'm sure these guys know that, like, there's not a time we turn our head and look at the bench that we're not looking at how all of our athletes are posturing themselves, how attentive they are to the game before I'm even thinking about putting them in. So, like, as coaches, that's how our minds are wired. So if your student athlete shows up to my campus and they don't look like they're ready to be there, I'm already going, well, I don't want to put you in. Which means I don't want to put you on my team. And so giving them the opportunity to do that to actually show that they can relate to a coach well. And there's no reason to be afraid, right? Because, I mean, there's not a coach out there that doesn't want to put together their best team and see all their athletes succeed. So, like, if you got to that point where you get to show up, just assume that they want you to do well. And so do well. Don't freeze. And so then when you get to your ID camp, we all know the old phrase, hard work beats talent every time talent doesn't work hard. By the time you walk on that field, that's not the time to get nervous. By the time you walk on the field, that's the time for you to show out, because there are going to be people on that field that assume they are entitled to the position and should have that stuff. And when these people that have these great numbers and look so good on film get run around by you, now coach is asking some questions, not just about them, but about you and the sort of athlete that they might be picking up because of the effort you're willing to put in front of them. And so, like, that's a big thing, is, like, trying to teach the confidence to walk in there as a student, even to my introverted students, and I have plenty, because you can be introverted. Introverted just means that you might need to be more one-on-one, which means you might actually need to be able to just have the conversation with coach and let mom and dad step off to the side for a minute. Because what made you nervous about that conversation was the fact that there was a crowd, even if they were your parents.
Oh,
And
that's a good.
so,
Okay.
and so like just the readiness and the willingness to show up and show out is huge. You know, I mean, as a coach, my athletes get told all the time they better win practice. Because if you didn't show up on Thursday, I don't care what you're going to put out there on Saturday. Because, like, I have all sorts of doubts now. And someone else beat you all day on Thursday. So, how am I going to trust that you're not going to get beat on Saturday? and so, that's it. It's like that big mindset stuff. And so, I have never had a problem where if a coach is like, what is the work ethic? And I talk about work ethic, and then I have a student athlete show up somewhere and show that work ethic. As soon as the coach sees what I said, like it clicks in their mind, oh, this is exactly what he was talking about with how hard this one goes. I've never had that not actually be successful.
That's really good. That's really, really, really good. Ahmad, before I put my wrap it up with my nugget, like wow, like guys, wow, this was super amazing. Just I'm gonna ask Ahmad, do you want to any final words before I wrap it up with my final nugget?
It's funny you said that. Yeah. It's I'm able to have out of box thinking with my club because the players that we've produced have had the effort that Nate is talking about. And I'm gonna end it with a quote. I like how Jalen Rose says, "Success only comes before work" in the dictionary. Period.
Okay. So as we wrap up, I want to thank each and every one of you for coming. I always learn. I have a bunch of more questions, so you'll be back. But this was just amazing. I have learned so much, but I want to highlight two things that you ended with that are super, super important. I don't think as parents, hear me, especially mamas, because we love to rescue our babies. Teaching your child to communicate on his or her own, to be able to articulate and speak for themselves, as much as we want to rescue, as much as we want to smooth the way. You've heard it. Shut up and move over. Sometimes you're the crowd that's getting in your child's way. So teach, there's immense value in early and often teaching your child how to articulate their own feelings, thoughts, emotions. So take this, not just for me. I know I preach this to you guys all the time, but hear what the coaches are saying. Sometimes your inability to let go and let little Johnny speak on his own and let little Sally speak up for herself, you're the reason they're not getting where they need to be. And that's a very real thing. And as parents, we need to acknowledge that. The final thing that I want everybody to take away from this is win freaking practice. Win practice. We talk about playing time all the time. Win practice. That's how you play. That's how you get a college coach's attention. That's how you get your high school coach's attention. You win practice. So I want to thank you guys for tuning in to the first 10-4 YouTube show of 2021. That's our time. I'm your hostess with the mostest, Jamesetta Cleveland, saying see you guys right back here next week.